Well, hello, and welcome to this week's episode of the Problem Properties podcast. And this week, I am going to take you on the road to one of the most significant clearings that I did back in January here in Southampton. So, just to give you a little context, during the Second World War, 20,000 bombs were dropped on London. And in Portsmouth, 20% of the buildings during the Blitz were either totally destroyed or badly damaged. And the same in Southampton, thousands of bombs were dropped on Southampton. So even though it's 80 years ago since the last bomb was dropped, the trauma and the shock is still left in the land where it hasn't been cleared. So a question for you today, if you live in the UK, is are you aware of how close your home or your workspace, your office is from where bombs were dropped? And do you actually live in a building that was completely destroyed during the Second World War and has been rebuilt? And as you walk around some of our cities, are you noticing where buildings have been rebuilt because they were destroyed in the Second World War? I'm going to talk to you about property trauma. And to help me to illustrate the really long-term damaging effects that this property trauma can have on buildings, also in the neighbouring streets and on people's lives, their work, their productivity, their creativity, their relationships, their health, and just their capacity to be happy. I'm going to give you some actual audio from the house clearing and the land clearing that I did back in January in Southampton. This is what happened and what started to come through whilst I was standing with my client at the entrance to the Crescent. I became aware of the full impact that was still being felt by the 12 houses that are now standing in this Crescent, 10 of which were destroyed in the Second World War. When we started doing the clearing, it was unbelievable. In a tiny crescent, there were endless cars coming and going, reversing around us, reversing in and out of the crescent, almost kind of knocking us out, That was like they were trying to hit us. And then one car went all the way down and then reversed out for absolutely no apparent reason. It was absolutely crazy. Here is some actual footage for what happened when I walked with my client to the very entrance of the Crescent. And this is what happened. We are starting a land clearing of this area, which is a crescent, so it goes around in a circle. I'm just going to tune into whatever needs to be cleared in this place. So the first thing I want to reference here is, it's a bit overwhelming, but the phenomenal pain and suffering and shock and trauma that still exists on this land from when the Luftwaffe in the Blitz of Southampton bombed this area and nearly every house here was destroyed. Probably people died. A few things about that story that I want to share. It's very interesting. We've got people coming and going. It was in the wrong area. I want, as we're sort of standing at the entrance to this present here, what I want you to understand is the shock and the trauma of this event happening, and the people losing their homes, their lives, and being left with nothing. And that's nearly all the Crescent. So even though it's been rebuilt, what we have to understand is the shock and the trauma and the total loss and grief and devastation that all these families suffered is still held in the land that we are walking on. So that's the first thing to try and understand, is that means that everybody
who came in and lived in these homes ever since has been living on a site of horrendous trauma, shock, fear and loss. And that will have had endless implications on relationships, on health, and on just their capacity to live, and not even knowing how these influences were affecting their day-to-day living and their relationships and their health and their capacity to be productive and creative and just live in a free way, because they were being so influenced by the shock of what had happened to people who lived on this land before, who lost everything. That's one side of it. Now the other side of it, in terms of where Andrea lives, is whilst all the other houses were destroyed, and then the house where you live, Andrea, everybody else lost their homes, and where your home is, you didn't. So there's some very significant dynamics that were created through that. One of the biggest ones is there's survivor guilt, because how come the other houses were destroyed, all the people and the families that you knew who lived around you, but yours wasn't? So there's a sense under your home of why me, why did we survive, and then a lot of guilt and shame and self-blame has come in, and that's in your home, right? That's what's underneath your home, added to which the envy of the others who are like, well you've got your home, and therefore you have no right to complain. You must never complain about anything. You have to put up with everything, because you're the one who got to have your home. Your home was saved. So because of that, you've had that double whammy. You're not allowed to complain. You have to put up with everything because you were the lucky one. But because you aren't the lucky one was the family that survived the Blitz, right? Their home survived. That's nothing to do with you, but you've inherited that dynamic. You've inherited that survivor guilt of being the lucky one, but you could quite easily turn around to me and say, well, but I wasn't lucky. Why was I lucky? But it's unconsciously been working on you. Does that resonate with you at all?
It does make sense. Yeah. I think the aspect of not complaining and just get on with everything, just get on with it and don't complain, that energy certainly. Yeah.
So there's that one, and then the other one is of course is like that everybody suddenly turned to you, to this family here that had survived, because they had nothing and nowhere to turn, so they will have all congregated and gathered around and needed a lot of help and support.
I've had a sense of that when you first started talking, that people came for help and support.
I see them all. I can see them. If I tune into that time, the horror. And so coming to the door of the home that you're in was like these people who'd lost everything, and the horror and the pain of all of that, and they came for support and they came for help, but it was totally overwhelming. It was there's this feeling like that's in your home of like, it's total overwhelm. It's too much. People are wanting too much. There are too many of them, and they've all got too much grief, too much loss.
Isn't that interesting? And I just want to hide in there and people aren't bringing people in.
Can you see echoes of that?
I can, because I've supported all the people in all of these homes apart from two.
Isn't that interesting?
I'd really difficult times in their lives.
But they're all in houses. They're living in houses with these emotional echoes of all that pain and trauma, which is not even theirs, because it hasn't been cleared. So this is a really significant day for the present, because today we are going to clear the shock, the trauma, the fear and the grief, and that neediness and all the projections onto your home as being like, how dare you, you're to be so lucky, you've got this thing, but they also want the support from you, right? That's overwhelming. On both things with nothing to do with you. You weren't lucky. You weren't lucky. You just bought this. You just happened to buy this house, right? It wasn't anything special. And why should you be the Mother Teresa of the present? now, 80 years after this happened.
No, I'm not anymore. No.
Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
Okay, so what we're going to do now is I'm going to call in the exact vibration that this land and these homes need in order to release this shock and this trauma and this pain from all these houses. So I'm going to call in that energy, and we'll walk around these homes together.
So then we went around and we cleared all of the houses one by one, and we brought in blessings, and we cleared the land, because it was fundamentally the land that was holding all the shock and all the trauma. So we had to clear the land and all those lives that were lost, and all the pain and the suffering and the homelessness. So there was an awful lot of work that we had to do. And then we stood in front of my client's house, and there we discovered something completely different that was also going on around her house.
It's like it's been in a cage. That's the feeling I get standing here. It's like you've all been living in a cage. You feel like the bars around it. So, there's a sense, I know you said about sanctuary, but there's also a sense of being trapped in there.
Yeah.
Imprisoned in there somehow.
Yeah, that's exactly how I feel, going out. Unless I have to go out. Yeah.
So should we see if we can release these bars around? Would that be okay?
Absolutely.
Okay. So I'm just going to ask that this land and just continue to heal and be cleared and be released and come back to its natural way of beingness, back into harmony, and back to love. That's the birds. Quite happy.
Yeah, they sound happy.
Quite happy. Anything else coming through?
I can really feel that.
What were you feeling? Say what you feeling.
I can feel a lightning.
Then we went inside my client's house, and I started to clear her house. And one of the first things that happened was I became aware that there was a presence of an earthbound soul who was there, who had been blown up, and she'd lived across the road, but her spirit was still there, and she was very, very angry. She had been blown up, that she had lost her life. And she wanted to tell us her story. So we listened to her story and we talked to her. And we were able to bring her some forgiveness, because she was very angry and very resentful. And once we'd heard her story, and we were able to give her the validation that she needed and to give her permission and forgiveness, then she was able to move on to the light. And I really want to emphasize how important this particular aspect of house clearing is, because we are inundated with television programs and films like Ghostbusters, where it's all about exterminating and sucking up these presences. But in my very extensive experience of working with earthbound souls and spirits, it's really not a question of anything like that. Generally, they have got stuck for some particular reason. They cannot find their way onto the light, and they're still there, often causing quite a lot of havoc. But they're causing havoc because they want attention, they want to be heard, because they want to move on. So it's really not just a question of trying to clear them or clear the space. It's a question of sitting down and listening to their story, talking to them and explaining that time has passed, that there is this possibility for them to move on out of suffering. And I treat earthbound souls in the same way that I would treat an earth currently living soul. And that is to listen to their trauma, to listen to their story and where they've got stuck, and to offer that love and compassion and that possibility to show them how they could move through whatever is blocking them, whatever is keeping them stuck. So we were able to do that for this soul who had had such a terrible shock when she had been blown up in the Second World War, and she'd moved across to my client's house because my client's house was one of the 2 houses that hadn't been destroyed by that bomb. So it was like a safe place for her to hide. And we also found some children in my client's kitchen, which was also very, very significant to her because she'd never felt comfortable cooking in her kitchen or even being in her kitchen. So once we were able to clear the children and understand why they were stuck, her whole house was cleared of any psychic activity. Then we cleared the rest of her house, and when we'd finished, my client felt much lighter, and I asked her to share with me how she was feeling, and this is what she had to say.
So, Catherine, thank you so much. I feel absolutely transformed. The stress and the tension that I've been experiencing in my home off and on since I've lived here, it's absolutely incredible how you picked up straight away. It's the land we have to work with, and recognise the bomb that went over as they just dropped them in the Crescent because they had a couple more to get rid of before they went back to Germany. So walking around and clearing that space, and we came back into my home and you cleared absolutely, I could just feel it, and you removing like bars from the front, and because I have felt a little bit like trapped in some way from moving forward, and I just feel absolutely completely altered. That just feels so freeing. I feel free, and the anger that woman had, that was just incredible to witness. Her stubbornness, what a beautiful, she asked for forgiveness, and of course forgiveness was just instant. As soon as she asked, it's there, and then off she went. That's just so incredible. And then in the kitchen, those lost children, that turbulence in the kitchen from Victorian times. And when we were speaking in the kitchen a wee while ago, just after those children had been released, and that light filling the space, you could just feel the space. My voice sounded different because there was more space, and coming back into my living room, I felt the stillness that I haven't felt in this room, and I can feel that. Just beautiful to be transformed. It's all love. Thank you, Catherine, so much. I'm so grateful to you. I feel a sense of absolute peace and forward momentum, and really excited about what's coming next. Just incredible.
So I hope you've enjoyed this week's episode of the Problem Properties podcast. If you feel that your home and your life might still be being affected by a significant event like a bomb being dropped on the home that you're living in or near the home you're living in, and it's been rebuilt, and there might still be emotional and psychic residues from the past impacting on you unconsciously, invisibly, but indelibly, I invite you to look at the link below and book yourself in a time to have a free assessment call by me, where I can tap into your workspace, your home space, your property, and let you know what is still going on there. I hope I've given you things to think about, to ponder on, about how impactful events from the past might still be resonating emotionally, practically, and in many ways on your life now, and to think about what it might be like if you were to clear all of that activity and resonance for yourself and for everybody else that's going to live in your property and in your area in the future. So that's it for this week's episode. And I have been your host, Catherine Veer, on the Problem Properties podcast. See you next week.